Most of us want to reach old age, and to be able to enjoy our retirement and hang out with our grandchildren. Although that might not be the case for everybody, we at least have the chance to get there if we're lucky. Our extended lifespan makes those kinds of wishes entirely possible. In the past, humans lived fairly less than we do now, and sometimes we take it for granted. What if our lifespan suddenly changed? What would happen if we only lived for 24 hours? Out of any primate, our species is the one that has the longest lifespan. Even more, human life expectancy at birth is twice that of wild chimpanzees. Now, it's important not to confuse life expectancy with human lifespan, because they mean different things, even though people often confuse them. Life expectancy is the average time that a person is expected to live, whereas the human lifespan is an individual specific concept explaining the upper border rather than an average. For example, the life expectancy at birth in the Bronze Age and Iron Age was 26 years, but the actual lifespan was 28 to 36 years. In the 18th century, the life expectancy at birth was 24.7 years in Prussia, 27.5 in France, and 39.6 in China, and 41.1 in Japan. The places where people live and their nationalities also play a certain part in the length of a human life. In the 1900s, the world average life expectancy at birth was 31. In the 50s, it was 48, and in 2014, it was 71.5. Most of the dramatic increase in the length of human life is due to improvements in the field of medicine. The variance between different countries and regions is due to the various public health systems, medical care, and diets. The economic status also plays a part in this. Generally, more affluent people live longer than those who are poor. This is considered to be the case because of access to more quality food and better health care. Likewise, your profession influences your lifespan. Since industrial air pollution plays a big part in how long a person lives, coal miners, for example, have lower life expectancies than other unrelated professions. Smoking cigarettes, doing drugs, genetic disorders, obesity, alcohol consumption, and exercise are some other factors related to the general life expectancy of a certain person. All of these factors that influence the lifespan of humans does make sense, but there is one that doesn't. It's actually true that women and men are expected to live different lifespans, and the reasons for this phenomenon are not precisely known. Women tend to live considerably longer than males. Even when fetuses are forming in the uterus, male babies have a much higher mortality rate than female babies. Even when they're born prematurely, female babies are more likely to survive than male babies. Also, when you look on the other end of the spectrum, women make up around 90% of all the people that are aged 110 years. Back in the past, this wasn't the case, and the females that were in a childbearing period had much higher chances of death than the males of the same age groups. This is considered to be because of the unconventional methods of giving birth to babies and the complications that came with the process. Nowadays, modern medicine takes care of that. Even though it is not exactly known why the female mortality rate keeps dropping at the expense of males, there are some traditional arguments that might influence these rates. According to statistics, men tend to be heavier users of alcohol, tobacco, and drugs in most societies. Therefore, they are more likely to get an illness like lung cancer, tuberculosis, and cirrhosis of the liver. Another point is that historically, men died more from injuries linked to wars, car accidents, or as a result of their jobs. Men are even more likely to commit suicide than women. And furthermore, the list of 100 oldest people that ever lived on planet Earth, which are officially verified, mostly consists of women. Even more interesting is the fact that out of those 100 people, 6 are currently still alive, and all of them are women. Only 6 people out of 100 are males. The oldest living woman currently is Kane Tanaka from Japan, and she has lived for 115 years. The oldest person that ever lived and is on top of this list is a French woman named Jeanne Clement, who lived 122 years. But how do we actually spend all these years? And how would it all change if we had to encompass a whole lifetime in a short 24 hours? The average American lives 79 years, which is a pretty substantial number, but all of those years are not for your free use. Essentially, if you like to sleep the average time of 8 hours per day, you'll end up spending around a third of your life, or 26 years, in bed. Approximately 68% of Americans decide to go to college and spend almost 3 years going to school in total. If you have a typical job that requires 40 working hours per week for 45 years, this will lower your free time for another 12 years. If you retire at the current normal time of 63 years, you will have 16 years to use in your retirement. However, statistically, people after that age have some kind of disablement that would require special care, which does not exactly fall under having the time of your life. But we're not done yet. 10% of the lifetime is spent doing chores, such as cooking, cleaning, or doing other types of housework, which amounts to around 8 years of your life. Around 2 years will be spent on actively taking care of children and other family members. Those are the major activities that take up most of the time in our lives. After them, you're hypothetically left with around 12 years of your life that you can use freely. How much time are we spending on our phones or in front of the TV and computers? Can the free time really be considered a free time? The answer is yes. Maybe you can enjoy all of those activities and spend all of those years doing what you really like. If you're working a job that you adore, and you take pleasure in doing house chores, and you take great care of your health so you can use your retirement years better, you'll definitely end up enjoying your life more. Essentially, all of us think that we have plenty of time to make plans and enjoy activities in the future, but the harsh truth is that none of us know how long we'll be on this planet. But what if we did know? What if every single person that ever born lived only for 24 hours, and that was it? In that case, after a person is born, it should take around 18 minutes for the person to learn how to walk properly. Babies usually learn this skill after a year, but if we only live 24 hours, people would learn this quite faster. When it comes to another very important ability, such as talking, babies spend their first 2 years saying a word here and there, and after 2 years, they start to form more complex sentences. If our lives were 24 hours long, this ability would be perfected 23 minutes after being born. After 6 years of living, we usually start with education, which in this hypothetical situation would happen only after 2.5 hours of being born. The person would attend school for 3 hours and 20 minutes before finishing the education. At this point, people would reach or be near what's the equivalent of 17 to 18 years of life, so another subject naturally will come into play: sex. Nowadays, male teens usually lose their virginity around 16.8 years old, whereas female teens are a bit later, around 17.2. In a 24-hour long lifespan, this would mean that people will have sex after the first 5 hours of being born. In this kind of lifetime, the whole sex would last only 0.03 seconds. And in the whole 24-hour lifetime, sex will preoccupy just 2.5 minutes. That's sad information. As we previously mentioned, going to work takes a long period of our times, and it's an important part of it. In this scenario, around 3 hours would be lost on your career. When the clock ticks 8 p.m., you would be able to enjoy all the benefits from your retirement, at least for a few hours. Entertaining yourself with reading materials such as books, newspapers, and magazines would use up 40 minutes out of your 24 hours. Since eating is one of the most important things in life and it's essential to our survival, around 50 minutes would be dedicated to practicing your cooking skills. People spend a lot of time also on trying to get from one place to another. Transport would take up around an hour and 20 minutes out of your whole life. But there is a positive side to this though, such as going to work or going to school would only take milliseconds out of your day. We can't forget one of the most important aspects of life: sleeping. We already know that we spend around a third of our life sleeping, so in this scenario, around 8 hours would be dedicated to that purpose. In this day and age, it's impossible to leave out the time that we all spend in front of our televisions and our laptops and mobile phones. Adding that time up, it would mean another 6 hours out of our 24 hours lost. This kind of living would be so intense because everybody would constantly be hurrying in order to not spend any time in vain. People would try to see as much as they could and experience as much as time allows. The good thing is that this is not and will most likely never be the case. Instead, we all get on average around 25,000 days. Videos like this one should remind you not to take those days for granted. Try to work a job that you love. Try to study what you're passionate about. Try not to get too much into mobiles and TVs, and the time that you do spend on them, make sure it's quality spent time. Tell people how you feel, and don't forget to take the time to do the little things that bring joy to your life, no matter how many obligations you have. Because in the end, none of us can know which of these days might be our last 24 hours on Earth. If you enjoyed this video, then why not subscribe? Hit that bell icon as well so you're more likely to get notified of our noble answers to your burning questions. Also, if you have any questions you want answered, make sure to tell me in the comments section down below. And to keep filling your brain with regal knowledge, check out these videos here. They're magnificent.